The first crack of breaking wood felt like it ran straight through my teeth. I was driving my old truck way too fast, down a country road that should have seen 40, not 70. Wind shoved at the side of the truck, rain hitting the windshield in hard sheets. The weather radio kept saying the same thing over and over. Supercell. Damage. Power lines down. Stay home. I had not really had a home for a long time. 6 months on the road will do that to a man. New town each week. New job site. New broken thing to fix. Same silence in the cab every night when the work was done. When I turned into Mitchell Orchard, it felt less like a farm and more like a battlefield. Branches were everywhere. Apple trees were stripped almost bare. Wet leaves were smashed into the mud, like someone had thrown buckets of green paint on the ground. A metal gate was twisted, one fence post leaning over like it had given up. But the worst part was the barn. It was a big, beautiful timber barn, at least 100 years old. Old beams, stone base, slate roof, the kind of building that made my hands itch, because I knew the work it took to raise it. Now the roof sagged in the middle like a broken spine. A huge oak limb had crashed through the top and snapped the main ridge beam clean in half. The clouds were still dark and heavy, but a thin line of sunlight showed through on the far hill, making the wet field glow like gold. It felt wrong, too pretty for the wreck in front of me. "You, the guy from Dispatch?" Her voice came from my right. I turned and saw her sitting on an old flatbed trailer next to the barn. One knee was pulled up, one boot on the floor of the trailer like she was ready to jump down and fight someone. A red tractor was hitched to the front, engine ticking as it cooled. She was feeding rope through the edge of a big blue tarp, fingers moving fast. Her hair was loose and wild from the wind, dark against her skin. Plaid shirt tied at the waist over a white tank, jeans rolled once at the ankle, boots muddy, hands rough. She looked like she worked for a living, not like someone playing farmer for fun. And even in that mess, she still somehow stole my breath. "I'm Brillin Foster," I said, resting my shoulder against the truck door. "Storm repair. I'm the guy who fixes what the weather breaks." She finally looked up at me. Her eyes were dark and sharp, with tired lines at the edges. She took me in from boots to scarred knuckles to the old gray truck, with my company name half washed off by time. She didn't smile. She didn't look impressed. She looked like she was measuring me against a list in her head. "I don't need God's mechanic," she said, voice a little rough from yelling over the wind. "I need a carpenter who can shore up a ridge beam before the first hard freeze hits in 10 days. Can you do that, or should I call the next name on the list?" "There is no next name for this kind of work," I said, stepping closer and catching the loose end of her rope. I pulled it tight in one clean motion, tied a knot, then handed it back. "You hire a random handyman, that barn comes down on your head before Christmas. You hire me, it stands another century." Quote, "Modest," she muttered, but her eyes stayed on mine. "Accurate," I said, "but I'm not cheap." "I have money," she said too fast. That was a lie. I had seen the rust on the tractor, the taped corner on the office window, the old tires stacked by the fence. This place was held together by stubbornness and baling wire. "I just need the roof sealed," she added. "Not a full rebuild. I don't need a partner. I don't need a hero." I looked up at the broken ridgeline again, then back at her. She was shivering a little in the cold wind, but her jaw was set hard. "I'll take the job," I said. "But I stay on site. No driving back and forth. After this storm, the county roads are a mess. If you want it done before the freeze, I sleep where I work." She slid off the trailer. Her boots sank into the mud with a wet sound. "There's a camper behind the silo," she said, pointing to a silver Airstream that looked like it had retired a long time ago. "It has power. Water's tricky. You can stay there." She held up one finger and locked her eyes to mine. "But just 1 week," she said. "That's the deal. You fix the beam, patch the roof, and then you go. No hanging around. No getting comfortable." I let my gaze trail from the barn to her hand, to that single finger drawing a line in the air. "1 week?" I said, nodding toward the broken roof. "That's a 2-week job for a crew of 4. You said you were the best, she answered. I am. Then do it in 1 week, alone. I laughed once, short and sharp. I pulled my clipboard from the truck, wrote down a number that would make a normal person choke, but was fair for this kind of work in this kind of rush. I tore off the sheet and handed it to her. Fine, I said. 1 week. I stay in the tin can. I fix the beam and the slate. But here's the thing, Hadley. I let my voice drop, let a little of my ego show through the professional tone. Bet you will ask me to stay longer. She snatched the paper from my hand. Her fingers brushed my palm, warm and rough. Working hands. Real hands. Don't hold your breath, Foster. Before I could answer, a black SUV rolled up the drive like it was too good for gravel. It parked without caring about the mud. The window slid down with a soft electric sound. The man inside wore a dark suit and a smile that screamed city. His cologne cut through the smells of wet dirt, diesel, and broken trees. It didn't belong out here. He didn't either. Hadley, he called, ignoring me. The offer stands. Maybe even more now. Her shoulders went stiff. I told you, Kingsley, she said, the rough edge back in her voice. I'm handling it. You're sinking, he said, soft and smooth. The bank is going to call that note. Your insurance will drag this out. Sign the deed tonight, walk away clean, no debt, no mess, new start. Get off my property, she said. He smiled wider, but it never reached his eyes. If you don't, he said calmly, I call the county Monday. That barn is unsafe. They red tag it. You can't store anything inside. Then you miss your payment anyway. We both know how that ends. I watched her jaw tighten. Her hand slid to the back pocket where she kept her checkbook, like it was a life jacket she wasn't sure still floated. I stepped forward before he could say sweetheart or anything else that would make this worse. You're on private land, I said, planting myself between them. And you just threatened her business in front of a witness. You really want to make that call? Quote. He finally looked at me. His gaze slid over my boots, my work belt, my muddy jeans like I was mud on his tires. And you are? He asked. The guy who's going to keep that barn standing? I said. Drive. For a second, it looked like he might get out of the car and try to scare me. Then he rolled the window up and backed down the drive, tires crunching slow over the gravel like he wanted the sound to stick in our heads. Hadley didn't thank me. She just stared at the barn, at the hole in the roof, at the damage she could see and the threat she couldn't. I strapped on my tool belt. It wasn't just a job anymore. It was a fight, and whether she liked it or not, I was on her side. The first 48 hours taught me one thing fast. That barn was not just broken. It was angry. The main ridge beam was a 12 by 12 heart pine timber, cracked straight through like a bone. To fix it, I had to jack the whole roof up from the inside, 30 feet in the air, while the wind still pushed against the walls. I set up scaffolding under the break, the steel legs sinking a little into the packed dirt. The air inside smelled like old apples, dust, and wet wood. Light came in through the hole in the roof in a sharp white column, catching sawdust as it floated. You need a spotter? Hadley yelled from the floor. I work alone, I called back, dragging the hydraulic jack onto the top plank. Not on my insurance, you don't, she shouted. If you fall, the bank gets everything. I am not letting you gift wrap my land to Kingsley like that. Before I could argue, she grabbed the ladder and climbed. Most owners stay on the ground and wring their hands. Hadley climbed straight up into the mess with me. She stepped onto the platform like she had no fear of heights at all, grabbed a pry bar and stood shoulder to shoulder with me. Tell me what to do, she said. My ego wanted to tell her to go back down. The beam groaned above us, a deep, sick sound. There was no time for pride. Grab that strap, I said, pointing. Wrap it around that post. When I crank the jack, you keep tension. If the strap goes slack, this whole thing shifts. We both end up flat. She nodded once. No smart remark, no drama. I pumped the jack. The metal arm hissed. The roof moved a tiny bit, just enough for the broken ends of the beam to start lining up again. The sound of the wood moving made my stomach twist. "Hold it," I said through my teeth. I leaned in with the new splice plate, fingers numb in the cold, lining up holes by feel. A gust of wind hit the barn, hard. The whole structure shivered. My boots slipped on the wet plank. My feet went out from under me. The world tilted. For a second, there was nothing solid under my right foot, only empty space and a long drop. A hand caught the back of my belt and my shirt at the same time, yanking me toward the post. My shoulder hit the beam. The jack handle slammed against my thigh. "I gotcha," Hadley said, voice tight and close to my ear. "Reset your feet." Her arm was wrapped around the upright, her other hand locked on my belt like a safety line. Her breath hit the side of my neck, fast and shaky. Her grip was strong. I planted my boots again, heart beating way too fast. "Thanks," I muttered. "Fix the roof, Foster," she said, but her voice was softer. We worked like that for hours. I called each move. She shifted the work light when shadows got in the way, handed me screws before I asked, braced posts when they wanted to slide. By the time we climbed down, the ridge was braced solid, safe for now. We stood on the dirt floor looking up at it, breathing hard. My arms felt like rubber. Her hair was damp against her neck. There was a streak of grease across her jaw. "You're not bad," I said. "You're not dead," she answered. I'll call that a win. The next morning, the fight started in a smaller way. I was in the Airstream boiling coffee that tasted like burned tires, standing in jeans with no shirt, when someone banged on the thin metal door. "Foster," Hadley's voice came through, sharp, "you're blocking the tractor path." I opened the door, cold air sliding across my bare chest. She was on the step, hand raised to knock again. Her eyes flicked down once, quick, taking in the scar along my ribs, then snapped back to my face. A quick flush climbed her neck. "I'm not blocking anything," I said, leaning on the frame. "I parked where you waved me in last night." "The crate truck comes through at 7, she said. "Ground is already soft. If he has to turn wide because of your truck, he'll sink, and I'll lose a day. Move it." She turned like she was already walking away from me and my attitude. "You know, please, is free," I said. She stopped, shoulders stiff. "I'm paying you more in a week than I made last month," she said without turning. "I have a bank officer breathing down my neck and a vulture in a black SUV trying to buy my land out from under me. I don't have time to be polite. Move the truck." I looked past her, saw the line of worry in the set of her shoulders, how her fingers shook a little on the doorframe. My smart reply died in my throat. "I'll move it," I said. 2 minutes. I shut the door, yanked a thermal shirt on, pulled on my boots, and moved the truck and trailer out of the lane to a spot that would be a pain for me but easier for everyone else. By the time the crate truck rumbled up the drive, the path was clear. The driver was older, in a faded cap and a jacket that had seen 20 winters. He hopped down slow, joints complaining. "You the roof man?" he asked. "Yeah," I said, grabbing the first stack of crates. "You must be the wood." He gave a short, rough laugh. "Old Man Miller," he said, nodding toward the house where Hadley had disappeared. "She give you the pleasant welcome or the sharp one?" "She's under pressure," I said, sliding the crates to the pallet. "She has reasons." He leaned his forearms on the side of the truck and looked toward the barn. "Her old man built half of that with his own hands," Miller said. "When the first bad year hit, the bank came sniffing. Suits like your friend in the black car started circling. Her daddy wouldn't sell. Said if somebody was going to lose this land, it was going to be him, not some banker on a golf course." He watched me keep working. "What happened?" I asked. "What always happens," Miller said. "Numbers beat pride. He kept the barn, kept the soil, lost everything else, including his health. Been gone 3 years now. She's been trying to stand where he left her, with a bigger storm on her back and half the help." He paused, letting that sink in. "You here for a paycheck?" he asked. "Or you here for the work?" "I'm here to fix the structure," I said. He nodded like that was enough for him. "Then fix it right," he said. "And try not to break her in the process." Hadley came out with a clipboard as we finished. She signed the slip, thanked Miller with a tired half-smile, then went back to counting crates without looking at me. "I'll stack them," I said, grabbing the nearest pile. "I didn't ask," she replied. "I know," I said. I carried the crates into the shed, lined them up neat and square. She followed with another stack, our shoulders passing close in the doorway. "You don't have to do that," she said. "I'm here for a week," I said. "Might as well act like it." She watched me for a second, as if she was trying to find the hook hidden in my words. "Just don't break anything," she said and walked away. But she didn't tell me to stop. By day 4, a rhythm had built itself without asking us. I woke up to the sound of her boots on the gravel and the smell of bread in the oven. She woke up to the sound of my hammer on steel and the low growl of my truck when I fired up the compressor. We passed coffee back and forth without talking about it. She climbed the scaffolding without waiting for an invite. I set safety ropes without making a speech. The work went faster than I expected. The new brace locked in smooth. The ridge sat straight. If I pushed hard, I could meet the 1-week deadline, which meant if I wanted an excuse to stay, I was running out of it. That afternoon, the sky went clear for the first time since I arrived. The orchard glowed a soft green. The mud had started to dry in ripples. Hadley sat on the same flatbed trailer as the first day, elbows on her knees, staring at the barn. I walked over and leaned against the side rail, wiping sweat off my neck with the back of my hand. "You always sit here when you're thinking about quitting?" I asked. "It's the only spot where I can see everything that might break at the same time," she said. "Barn, trees, house. If I look away, I swear it all disappears." "It won't," I said. She turned her head and really looked at me. The wind picked up a loose piece of hair and moved it across her cheek. She did not fix it. "Kingsley dropped this off this morning," she said. She pulled a thick envelope from her back pocket, folded in half. She handed it to me like it was something that might burn. I opened it. Printed terms. "Deed transfer." A number at the top that looked generous if you did not read the rest. A line about immediate possession. "It's not a rescue," I said. "It's a buyout with a pretty bow." "I know," she said quietly. "The bank is done being patient. Monday they call the note. If I cannot make the full payment, they can start the foreclosure. I could walk away today with a little money and no debt, or I can stay and risk losing everything and still owe." She was not whining. She was laying out numbers like boards on a sawhorse. "You kept the offer," I said, folding the papers back into the envelope. "Evidence," she said, "in case he pushes too hard." Her eyes met mine again. There was sharpness there, but also something softer, something I was not sure I had earned yet. "You said you'd stay a week," she reminded me. "You still planning to hold your breath on that bet?" The question sat between us like fresh lumber. I thought about Tennessee and the next job. I thought about my trailer and the road, and the small, simple life where I fixed things and then left. Then I looked at her, sitting on that tired old trailer under a barn that was almost straight again, holding an envelope that could steal her whole world. For the first time in a long time, I was not sure if I wanted to finish a job fast. And the worst part was, the barn was not done trying to surprise us. I found the real problem by accident. We were supposed to be in the home stretch. I was up in the rafters, brushing sealant over the new splice, feeling pretty good for a man who had barely slept. The ridge sat straight. The braces felt solid under my boots. Light came in soft through the patched slate. Then I noticed a dark shadow around one of the posts on the north side. It was small, the kind of stain most people would ignore, but the grain around it looked wrong. Too soft. Too flat. I pulled my pocket knife and shaved off a thin curl of wood. It fell apart in my fingers like dry bread. "Damn," I whispered. I pressed my moisture meter into the timber. The numbers jumped high. Too high. The beam was rotted from the inside. The storm had shoved extra weight onto that line when the ridge snapped. That hidden rot had been waiting for a reason to fail. If we got another heavy wind or a snow load, that whole north section would fold. I took 2 photos. One of the rot. One of the reading on the meter. Then I climbed down. Hadley was in the wide doorway with a clipboard in her hands. Her hair was pulled back sharp. Her cheeks were pink from the cold. She looked hopeful for the first time all week. "Tell me you're almost done," she said. "I wish I could," I answered. Her smile faded. "We have a problem," I said. I led her to the post, tapped the spot with my knuckles, then pressed the knife into it again so she could see the wood crumble. "This is rotten," I said. "Not just surface, deep." The storm put more weight on this line. If we leave it like this and get a bad blow, it fails. The roof comes down on this side. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but soon. "How bad?" she asked, voice tight. "We have to sister a new support, add bracing, and tie the roof load into sound timber," I said. "That is more work." "More lumber, more time." "How much more time?" she asked. 3 days if we get lucky," I said. 4 if the weather fights us." The clipboard slipped. It hit the concrete with a sharp crack. "The freeze hits Sunday night," she said. "If the roof is not sealed before then, the apples in here freeze. If they freeze, they are done. I lose the buyer. The check does not come. I lose the payment." I could have lied. I could have told her it might hold. I could have taken the money and driven away. "I can work nights," I said. "I can rig lights. I can push hard. I can get it safe enough before Sunday to hold you through the freeze. But I cannot do it in the same week, and I cannot do it for free." Her eyes burned. "I can't pay you for extra days," she snapped. "I barely scraped together what you already quoted. Lumber on top of that would finish me. You know that." "Forget the money," I said. She stepped back like I had slapped her. "No," she said, "I am not a charity case. I am not your project. You did your week. The ridge is fixed. You promised one. It is done. Pack your tools, Foster." "You are not hearing me," I said, trying to keep my voice level. "If we walk away from this, that wall is a danger. I do not leave people under something that can kill them. That is my risk," she said. "My land, my choice. You do not get to decide what I live with, or what I owe you." She turned and walked away fast. Her boots hit the steps to the house without slowing. "Hadley," I called. She did not look back. For a minute I just stood there, fists clenched, staring at the rotten post like it had insulted me. Then I kicked a bucket so hard it flew across the barn and smashed into the stone wall. The sound echoed around the old beams. I packed my tools. I coiled cords. I loaded clamps. I stacked my gear in the truck with quick, angry motions. The Airstream looked even smaller in the gray light. The whole place felt like it was pushing me out. I slid into the driver's seat and started the engine. It growled, low and familiar. My hand rested on the shifter. I could drive away. I had another job lined up 2 states south. Warmer weather. Clean plans. No stubborn woman with stubborn land. No rotten post waiting for the wrong gust of wind. I put the truck in gear. Then I looked in the rearview mirror. The barn roof line was clean and straight now. The tarps flapped a little in the wind. The north wall sat there quiet, hiding its weakness inside. The farmhouse porch light was on, even though it was still daylight. A small square of soft yellow. I could hear Old Man Miller's voice in my head. "Do it right." I swore under my breath and slammed the truck back into park. I shut the engine off and got out. The wind cut through my jacket as I walked up to the farmhouse. My boots crunched on the gravel. My breath came out in white puffs. I did not knock. She was on the porch swing with a blanket around her shoulders, coffee mug cupped in both hands. Her gaze was fixed on the driveway, like she was waiting to see my taillights disappear. "You're still here," she said quietly. "I am," I said. "I told you to go," she answered. "I heard you," I said. "I am not doing it." She let out a breath that shook just enough to give her away. She turned her head and looked at me. Her eyes were bright in the dim light from the porch. "You don't get to stay just because you feel bad for me," she said. "You don't get to play savior for free. That is not fair to either of us." Quote, "I don't feel bad for you," I said. "I respect the hell out of you. There's a difference." Her fingers tightened on the mug. "You barely know me," she said. "I know you caught me by the belt when I almost fell 30 feet," I said. I know you worked beside me on that scaffold when most owners would have stayed inside and cried. I know you're trying to keep a promise to a dead man and a living bank at the same time. That is enough to know what kind of person you are." I stepped closer and stopped in front of the swing, blocking her view of the road. "I am not leaving that rod up there waiting to fall on your head," I said. "So you have two options. You can fire me, and I will work anyway. Or you can let me stay and we can argue later about how you will pay me back." Her throat moved as she swallowed. Her eyes went shiny. She blinked hard, refusing to let anything fall. "You are insane," she whispered. "Probably," I said. She set the mug down on the little table next to the swing. Her hands were shaking now. Without the mug, there was nothing for her to hold on to but the edge of the blanket. "Why?" she asked. "Why does this matter to you? You told me yourself. You are a man who passes through, fixes it, leaves. That is who you are." "Maybe I am tired of being that man," I said. "Maybe I do not want to drive away from another place, knowing I left something dangerous behind. Maybe I am tired of watching people like Kingsley circle people like you." She stood up slowly. The blanket slipped off her shoulders and fell onto the swing. She was closer now, close enough that I could see the freckles across her nose, the line of tired in the corners of her mouth. "I cannot ask you to stay," she said. "Not when I cannot pay for it." "You do not have to ask," I said. "I am telling you. I am staying." We stood there in the cold June air, breath mixing between us. The porch light buzzed softly. Somewhere out in the orchard, a branch creaked. I lifted my hand, slow, giving her every chance to step back. I brushed my fingers along her jaw, rough skin against soft. She did not pull away. She stepped in, just a little. Her eyes flicked from my mouth back to my eyes. "Last time I checked," she said, voice low, "you made a bet." "Yeah?" I asked. "You said I would ask you to stay longer," she said. I waited. She reached up, grabbed the front of my jacket in both hands, and pulled me down to her. The kiss was not gentle. It was tight and hot and real. Her mouth met mine like she had made up her mind and did not plan to apologize for it. I slid one hand to the back of her neck and the other to her waist, holding her steady, nowhere near the edge of anything. When we finally broke apart, she kept her forehead against mine for a second, breathing hard. "I am not saying it out loud," she murmured. "You don't have to," I said. She stepped back, eyes clearer now. "Fine," she said. "If you are going to be stupid enough to stay, then get your generator and your lights. We have a wall to fix before the storm comes back." "Yes, ma'am," I said. She rolled her eyes at the ma'am, but there was a small smile trying to show. We spent the next hour dragging equipment into the barn. I ran extension cords up into the rafters, hung work lights from nails, fired up the generator. The old barn glowed in warm yellow patches, bright against the dark outside. Hadley stood next to the rotten post, hand resting on it like she was finally seeing it for what it was. "What do you need?" she asked. "Coffee," I said. "And for you to hold the ladder when I tell you." "Done," she said. The wind outside started to rise again, whistling through the broken boards on the far side. The temperature dropped. We were almost out of time. But for the first time since I pulled into that wreck of a yard, it felt like it was not just my fight, it was ours. The storm came back like it had a grudge. By midnight, the wind was howling through the valley, pushing at the barn walls like a giant palm. The lights I had strung up inside shook on their cords. The old wood creaked and answered back. I was up on the ladder at the north wall, shoulder pressed to the new brace, drill humming in my hand. My fingers were stiff from the cold. My breath fogged the air. "Bolt," I called. Hadley slapped the next bolt into my palm. She was on the ground, one foot braced against the ladder, both hands gripping the side rails. Her hair was pulled back in a messy knot, hoodie under her jacket, jaw clenched. "Wind just hit 50, she shouted, looking at her phone. They extended the warning to sunrise. "Good thing barns don't read warnings," I said. Another gust slammed into the outside wall. The rotten section groaned. The ladder shuddered. My boot slipped half an inch. Her hands clamped down harder. "I got you," she said, voice level this time. I drove the bolt through, feeling the vibration all the way up my arm, then reached for the washer and nut. The new bracing timber groaned, then settled, taking part of the load. I could feel the shift through the ladder, down into the floor. One more, I said. How many one mores do you have? She shot back. Enough, I answered. We worked in a tight, brutal rhythm. I drilled. She fed hardware. I tightened. She repositioned the lights. The wind screamed. But the groans in the wall got less wild, more controlled. At one point, a slate tile ripped free and crashed to the ground outside with a sharp, ugly crack. The sound shot straight through my nerves. We're fine, I said. You always say that when we're not, she replied. That's fair, I admitted. Finally, I ratcheted the last nut down and felt the brace bite hard into solid wood. The vibration under my boots eased. The groan turned into a low, steady hum, the kind that told me the load had a clean path now. Done, I said, letting the drill hang on its strap. You sure? She asked. I bounced once on the ladder, feeling for give. The structure answered solid. No new creaks, no shifting. I'm sure, I said, this will hold. She let out a breath I didn't know she was holding. Then get down before I have a heart attack, she said. I climbed down. My legs trembled a little with each step, part fear, part fatigue. When my boots hit the dirt, she didn't move her hands from the ladder right away. She just looked up at the bracing, at the roof, at the wall that had almost betrayed her. You changed it, she said quietly. Changed what? I asked. The way it carries weight, she said. You said that before. Load path, you moved it. Yeah, I said. Sometimes you can't save what's rotten. You just stop asking it to hold everything and give the job to the parts that can. She looked at me then, really looked, and I knew she heard the part one wasn't saying. Her hand lifted. She brushed her thumb across my cheek, wiping away a streak of dirty sweat. You're freezing, she murmured. So are you, I said. We stepped outside together. The wind cut right through my jacket. The sky was a mess of fast gray clouds. The temperature had dropped so hard the mud was already starting to crust. We pulled the last tarps tight, locked the doors, and checked every latch twice. By dawn, the wind finally died. The air was sharp and still. The yard, the fences, the orchard rows, everything glittered with hard white frost. It looked beautiful. It would have been deadly if we had failed. We slid open the barn door. Cold air rolled out, but my breath wasn't smoke white like outside. Inside, it was just above freezing, enough to hurt, but not enough to kill. We walked between the crate stacks. Hadley pulled one apple from a middle pallet, thumb pressing into the skin. Firm, not mush. She cut into it with her pocket knife and checked the flesh. No ice crystals. No glassy sheen. They're okay, she whispered. I checked a few more at random. Same thing. Safe. She sank onto an empty crate and put her face in her hands for a second. Her shoulders shook once. I let her have that moment. Then she lifted her head and wiped her eyes with the back of her wrist. Okay, she said. Now I just have to make the money appear. Bank is Monday? I asked. 8:30 a.m., she said. My favorite form of torture. Then we get ready, I said. We did not see Kingsley on Sunday. Maybe the storm kept him away. Maybe he was at home, ironing the suit he planned to wear when he walked into the bank to pick up the pieces. Monday morning dawned clear and cold. I wore my cleanest work jeans and a black button-down that had only a few frayed spots. She wore dark slacks and a simple green sweater that made her look softer, even though her eyes were all business. You don't have to come, she said on the porch, keys in hand. I know, I said. I'm coming anyway. We drove her truck into town, heater rattling, radio off. The bank sat on Main Street, brick and glass, with a fake brass sign out front. It looked small after the barn. Inside, the air smelled like paper and perfume. A woman behind the counter gave Hadley a tight, polite smile. Morning, Ms. Mitchell, she said. Mr. Harper is expecting you. We sat in 2 chairs across from his desk. Mr. Harper was the kind of man who wore a tie even when no one was watching. His hair was neat. His smile was practiced. "Hadley," he said, "I wish this were a different type of meeting." She set a folder on his desk. Her hands were steady. "It can be," she said. He opened his mouth to give the speech he had probably practiced. Then he saw the check on top of the papers. His eyebrows went up. It wasn't huge. Not to him, but it was the exact amount written in his letter, plus the late fee, plus a little extra, because Hadley was not the type to risk a math argument when the stakes were this high. "How?" he asked before he could stop himself. "Emergency contract," she said. "Rush cider order from a distributor that wanted local fruit if I could guarantee safe storage." I could. I did. They paid faster than a bank ever has. He cleared his throat. "Well," he said, "if you can satisfy the note in full today, we do not accelerate. We close this file." He reached for the drawer with the transfer forms. Hadley placed her hand flat on the desk. "And I want it in writing," she said, "that my account is in good standing and this property is not under review for foreclosure." He glanced past her, maybe noticing me for the first time. I didn't speak. I just met his eyes and waited. Harper adjusted his glasses. "Yes," he said, "of course, we can provide that." He typed, printed, and signed a short statement. He slid it over. Hadley read every word, lips moving just a little. When she was satisfied, she folded it and put it in her folder. The main door to the bank opened hard enough to make the glass rattle. Kingsley walked in, 2 steps too fast for casual, then forced himself to slow. By the time he reached the desk, his smile was back. "Tom," he said to Harper, "you got my message about the Mitchell account." Harper glanced at Hadley, then at the check on his desk. "I did," Harper said. "We won't be needing any outside assistance. Ms. Mitchell is paying in full today." For a second, all the polish slid off Kingsley's face. "That's not possible," he snapped. Then he caught himself. "I mean, that's surprising." "Barn's still standing," I said quietly. "Apples are safe. Storm didn't do the job for you." He turned on me. "You're making this worse for her," he said. "You think the numbers care about some cowboy with a hammer?" "No," I said, "but they care about timing. And about intent." Hadley lifted something from her folder and laid it on Harper's desk. It was the offer from Kingsley, with his conditions, his deadline, and the note about making calls written in his own neat handwriting. "I'm sure you didn't mean for this to sound like pressure," she said mildly, looking right at him. "But if someone ever reviews my file and asks why I felt cornered, I want this in the record too." Harper's jaw tightened. He scanned the paper, then looked at Kingsley. "That's not standard," the banker said carefully. Kingsley's smile came back, but it looked plastic. "You're making a mistake," he told Hadley. She stood up. "I just made a payment," she said, "and I'm keeping my land. I can live with that kind of mistake." We walked out together. The sunlight on the sidewalk felt different, warmer, real. She didn't speak until we were back in the truck, doors closed. "I thought I was going to throw up in there," she admitted. "You didn't," I said. "You stood up and made a man in a suit nervous. That's not nothing." She laughed once, quick and shaky. Then she looked at me, really looked. "So," she said, "your week is up." "Yeah," I said. "Guess so." "You fixed the ridge," she said. "You braced the north wall. You kept the apples from freezing. You made sure I didn't sign my life away in a carpeted office." "All in the contract," I said. "Was this in the contract?" she asked, voice softer. She reached across the seat and took my hand. Her fingers threaded between mine, firm and sure. I could have said something smart. I didn't. "You still think I'm going to ask you to stay longer?" she asked. "I don't know," I said. "Maybe you already did." She looked at our joined hands, then back at me. "Fine," she said. "I'll say it clear so your thick skull doesn't miss it." She took a breath. "Stay," she said. "Not just 1 week. Stay through winter. Help me rebuild the porch, fix the fencing, yell at the tractor when it dies, drink bad coffee on the porch with me when the first snow hits." She squeezed my hand. "Stay with me, Breland," she said. There it was. No joke, no half words. I felt something in my chest that had been tight for years finally let go. "I told you," I said, a slow smile pulling at my mouth, "that you would ask me to stay longer." She rolled her eyes, but she was smiling too. "Don't make me regret it, Foster," she said. "Not planning to," I answered. Back at the farm, the barn stood straight against the clear blue sky. The porch boards creaked tiredly under our boots as we walked up, side by side. She opened the front door, then turned and looked at me. "You can still sleep in the trailer if you want," she said. "But you don't have to." "What are my options?" I asked. She stepped closer, sliding her hand up my chest, fingers curling into my shirt. "Inside," she said, "where it's warm, where I can find you when another storm hits." I bent down and kissed her, slow and deep and certain. The barn, the trees, the old house, all of it stood around us, scarred but still here. Not because one of us was strong enough alone, but because, for once, neither of us tried to carry the whole load by ourselves. Turns out, sometimes the best thing you can do for a breaking structure or a breaking heart is not to walk away when your week is up. It's to stay when staying scares you more than leaving.